Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. I've got a great show for you today. I got to ask you, as you're sitting there in your car or maybe, oh, I know, maybe you're using your iPhone and you've got your headsets in and you're running and you are going fast and you're really running and all that kind of good stuff. We've got a great guest for you today. He is one of the key members of Meta Performance Group, and you can go to his website, which is metaperformance.com. His name is Michael Seiler. It's Tyler.
Tyler.
Last names I'm just terrible with. But in any event, before we got on the show, I had read that he had run a marathon or two. He has not run a marathon or two. That is not true on his website. He's run 37 or some silly thing, marathons. And by the way, if you don't know what a marathon is, I know the Boston Marathon, and you might have heard of it, but it's like 24 miles?
26.2.
20. How did the last 6.2 go?
Well, there's been some that were great. There's been some that felt like someone stepped out the crowd and threw a piano on my back.
Well, and that's one of the things that you work on and you help people with is to create great performances, both mentally, physically, and emotionally, and spiritually, and all of that. Because I gotta believe that when you're on the starting line of a race that's 26 miles, and it's a coming, and you feel prepared, but it's one of those things where it's the beginning of 2.5 or 3 hours, or in some cases longer than that, time of pain and stuff. And how did you? Well, I know you played soccer as a kid, and you ran to get to stay in shape, but then how did you get into running marathons?
Really, it started. I don't know what first made me say, "Well, I want to do this," but I made either it was a mistake or it was a gift. I prefer to think it was a gift, but I remember vividly sitting at Thanksgiving dinner with my family, and I am my family is very competitive. My older sister ran track at Auburn University. My younger sister was always into sports and was very competitive. And as you said, I only ran to stay fit for soccer, so never any distance. And I just said, I'm going to run a marathon. And it was like both my sisters took out this imaginary notebook and said, I'm writing that down. And they kept asking me about it. And I finally signed up for, yeah, signed up for one, ran my first one, had no idea what I was doing. And it was one of the toughest things I'd ever done at that time. And from there, I was hooked. I was like, okay, that was really hard. How can I go faster? How can I get better? How can I not suffer as much? And so that really started my deep dive into distance running.
Do you remember the movie Rocky? Are you old enough to remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
And Mickey said it one time, you have to train 10,000 hours to fight a professional 15-round fight. How many miles do you have to log to run a marathon before you run the marathon?
Now the thinking has changed a little bit over the years. There was definitely a bias when I was first starting training, that more was better. So You would see people that were running 50, 60, 70 miles a week, even more than that. Um, Nowadays, I honestly, with most folks that are running, let's say their first marathon and they want to run something like a 4-hour marathon, typically they're not going to run more than 30 or 40 miles a week. I typically don't have them run the full distance. I will get them close, usually around 22, 23 miles, just so they kind of know what it is to be running that long. But I honestly believe when you get in that last 3 or 4 miles, euphoria takes over and you figure out a way to finish.
Euphoria or exhaustion?
Uh, Could be a little mix of both, but yeah, you're close enough, especially first time marathoners. I always tell 'em never underestimate how you'll find this second wind in those last few miles, regardless of how tired you are, because you're so close to the finish and you're so close to achieving your goal.
The human body and the human mind are just amazing.
Mm,
Um, when I was in high school, they asked me. I'd been on the wrestling team the year before, and they asked me to because they were minus a 190 guy, and so I was 178, and so I said, well, I'll wrestle this one time. Turns out that the guy I was going to wrestle was the state champion, the current state champion. So I figured it was being going to be a short little adventure,
hmm
but as we went on and we went on, and he got a couple penalty points for a full Nelson and all that kind of stuff. But at the end, it was the most bizarre experience I'd ever had, which was I stood up because if you get an escape, you get a point. And suddenly I had this incredible, and we'd been doing this for like 6 minutes now. I had this incredible burst of energy. I
hmm
had no earthly idea where it came from. And neither did he, because he was really upset that I did that. But why? How does that happen? You're tired, you're beat up, you're really, and suddenly you can have the second burst of incredible energy. Where does that come from?
Well, there's a lot of science and research in that, and that we are as humans. We probably only tap into, we're just scratching the surface of our potential. Um, I think it really comes down to mindset. And your brain's number one job is to keep you alive. So it's constantly scanning for threats, for a tiger or an approaching car. Or if you put yourself under stress, running, say, a marathon or doing a full distance Ironman, your brain is going to start talking to you as you feel fatigued. And this is one of the things we work on with our clients, is how to strengthen that mindset so you can keep those voices at bay, because they're going to tell you you're hurting, you should slow down. um, just going to be a lot of self-talk going on. And those that find that burst of energy, um, or that second wind, as we call it, are typically have found a way to push through that negative mindset to say, I can handle this. I've done this in training. I mean, that's why we have people train, is so they can teach their body, not only get in shape, but teach their mind to understand that, oh, you can handle a little more. You can handle a little more each time, and just keep, I mean, that's the key to resilience, is you just keep putting them in stressful, not overwhelmingly stressful, but just manageable challenges, so that their body just adapts as their mind adapts, and so they realize, oh, I can do hard things. I've done hard things before. Why not?
And so really, when you get down to it, it really has more to do with your mindset than it does to do with your physicality. Because there are athletes that are really, really good, but it is more of their mindset than it is because you get to a certain level, pro athlete or something, they're all
hmm
good. They're
Yeah.
they're all really good. But the distinction is the mindset between a Larry Bird and a Magic Johnson and other guys that are just as talented as they are, but they don't have the mindset. How do you train the mindset?
Uh, there's a couple ways. I think one is, again, giving people those just manageable challenges. So those stretch opportunities. Because what that starts to do is, your brain becomes like a prosecuting attorney sometimes, and it keeps presenting this evidence of, well, remember when you forgot to do this? Remember when you failed at this? Remember when you failed at that?
Oh yeah.
And so what we want to do is provide these proof points that show, I mean, this is, one of the things to combating imposter syndrome as well, is start to create these proof points so that a person that's anxious going into a race, I can go back and talk to them pre-race as we're talking strategy and say, okay, remember that workout that you thought you couldn't complete and yet you did? You did that hard thing. And so it's just kind of rewiring the brain by these successively harder workouts. So that's one way, is just through the physical context. The other way is talking them through. I do what's called story work sometimes with my clients, where I'll have them, maybe they want to deal with a particular area where they're struggling or they feel stuck. And so I have them write out a story about this situation, and we start to pull that story apart. One, to see, is that real? Is that, or is that just an interpretation? Because that's what our brain does, is it interprets things, and often to protect us. And so we start to pull apart the story and start to find the truth in that story. And that also helps just strengthen that mindset, because they realize, like, oh, that was just my brain talking smack to me. That's not really what it is. The real situation is, I have done this type of thing before. This particular thing might be new to me, but I've done this sort of thing before, and I'll figure out how to tackle this.
So, you as a coach, because you've been a coach for a long time as well,
Hmm.
you as a coach are working more along the lines of helping people with their mindset rather than just the physical, running laps or
Yep.
doing push-ups or that kind of stuff. Because everybody can do that stuff, but it's
Well,
the
I think
mindset.
that's the easiest part of the job, is building the training plan. I mean, the physical side is honestly the easy. It's the mindset part that, um, one, brings me the greatest joy, because it's like solving a puzzle all the time. And so it requires me to read the feedback that they have about a workout, to when we talk on the phone or in a video call. I'm always looking for signs and listening to tone. They say they're doing well, but I can see on their face they're not doing well, or their tone is very monotone when they're describing things. And um, those type of things help to fill in around the numbers, um, that help me understand, how's their mindset doing, and so, do we need to talk about it? Is there something we're struggling with that we need to address?
Do you ever have to call somebody on their mindset?
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
oh yeah.
imagine that's kind of a deep conversation. It's like, you're not doing what you could be doing here.
Yeah, I had a athlete that had been wanting to break her PR, her personal record, in a half marathon. And I on paper, like, looking at her training, everything looked great. Everything looked fine. And I agreed to pace her, and we were on pace until, I guess, it was a half marathon, so it was 13.1 miles. I think we were on pace till about 7 or 8, and then the wheels started to come off, and I was scratching my head. I couldn't figure it out. And so, working with my partner, I said, "Can you go in and look at her training, see if I missed something, or are there things I'm missing?" And we had a real good sit down, this my client and I, and really talked about. It was a really honest conversation. Say, hey, I went back and looked at your training, and here's the things I'm seeing. how do you feel about that? And it was basically that she wasn't doing the work when you really dove into it. And it like a light bulb went on, in her brain, and she realized, she's like, I get it. I've been basically sabotaging myself. And so we started working on that. Okay, so how do we fix that? Let's make a commitment right here to here's the things um, that you're going to do to fix that. Now they had to come from her. I mean, I could have told her, but that's not the role of the coach. Like it's better if she says, "Here's the things I want to commit to because that goal is important to me." And I think it was about 6 months later, um, we did another half marathon, and she smashed her PR by about 7 minutes. And it
Holy
was
mackerel.
the training was basically the same. The things that she tightened up in her training was a bit of it, but I think the biggest piece was just in her brain, realizing she can do it. She was just almost scared to do it. And once I pointed out, hey, you've basically been sabotaging yourself, and her acknowledging it, she's like, now I see that now.
And when we come back from this break, Michael, I've got to ask you a couple things. First of all, what is Meta? And we'll talk about that. And
Great.
he's from metaperformance.com. And we're going to talk about that. And I've also got a story about a guy by the name of Roger Bannister that I want to bring up because it is really indicative of what the human is capable of that even people say it's not. So we're going to talk about all that when we come back. Michael, Tyler is with us, right?
Seiler.
Gosh,
It's all
I
right.
know it's Michael
We'll
Seiler.
get there. By the end of the hour, we'll be there.
You're going to change my mindset. That's
That's right.
and so we're going to talk about all that because it is really, really important. And by the way, this isn't just for athletes. This is for business people. This is for people and their home life. It can translate into and can change really everything about you if you allow it to and choose to. So we're going to be right back after this real quick message. And this guy, speaking of which, is a real estate mogul, and he helps people that are trying to become real estate guys, but they just don't know how to do it. And he provides you with all the information you need so that he can't do it for you, just like Michael can't. But he can, but you can learn from him. And then if you apply the principles, you will learn how to do it. And we'll be right back.
You became a real estate agent for freedom, success, and real momentum. So why are you still stuck waiting for closings to save you? I'm Ophir Adar, founder of Real Momentum, and I help agents like you become seven-figure earners. My first client that I coached, brand new agent, made $250,000 back in 2006. What's the secret? You feed your white wolf. That's the part of you that's bold and unstoppable and a closer and able to build rapport quickly. So click Get Listings at Real Momentum and let's unleash your real estate potential.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Michael is here, and we are talking about his company, which is metaperformance.com. And go there. And I asked him before, and I've totally forgotten now. What does meta mean?
So it is not Facebook.
Yep.
It's Meta with two T's. But Meta comes from the Buddhist tradition, from the Pali language, Pali language, and it means loving kindness. And the Buddhist tradition, which I ascribe to, um, says that loving kindness starts with ourselves, that we have to treat ourselves with loving kindness before we can even think about trying to take care of others or expressing our loving kindness, treating others with loving kindness. And this has been what my business partner Holly and I realize is that this is kind of the missing element within a lot of coaching, both athletic and corporate coaching, is we just get in this, got to get on the hamster wheel, got to grind, 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 grind. A lot of the folks I work with are type A plus people who feel like we just got to keep, you know, going, going, going. And I'm usually the one saying no. Um, People are kind of react weirdly when I say, "Well, what day do you want to have off?" And they're like, "Day off? What? No, no days off." I'm like, "Yeah, you're gonna have a day off." Um, so it's really about teaching people how to treat themselves with loving kindness. Things like taking time out for themselves, listening to their body. Um, my goal as a coach is to get them where they can start to make decisions on workouts and stuff that they come to me and say, "Hey, I'm not really not feeling great. I'm going to take an easy day today," or "Hey, I took today's run easy because I just wasn't feeling it." That's usually a sign where I realize turning them around and they're starting to figure out how to treat themselves with loving kindness.
I played football in high school and I
Hmm.
played in the mid 70s. And coaches were not nice to you.
No.
Uh, they yelled, they screamed, and in those days, they didn't even give you water on the field. I went to one of my son's practices, and they said, "Okay, everybody, water break." And I said, "What? They have
Yeah.
water breaks now?" And and stuff. But the coaches that really got the best out of me were coaches who treated me like a human being and
Yeah.
treated me nicely and with the idea of we together are going to make you the best. I was a catcher and make you the best catcher that we can and stuff and those so the I but there's still to this day I think are still a lot of coaches who follow that old
Hmm.
who is it Bart or Lombardi philosophy of yell and scream and all that kind of stuff and stuff like that. So, but it's not effective. In the newer way,
No,
it's better.
no. And I when I look back on the coaches that I was most successful working with, um, it was coaches that I knew cared um, about helping me, about supporting me. They cared about me as a person. They still occasionally and often deservedly yelled at me, but I knew it came from a place of wanting to push me to be better, not from just a. It wasn't anger. It wasn't any of that. It was honestly because I felt supported by them, and I knew off the field the reason why was because they truly cared about me.
When I was in little league, I had a coach that I just thought the world of, and he was hitting ground balls to the infield, and one of the kids just wasn't getting it, and he said, "Look, you got to put your hand down. You got to do that," and stuff, and the kid started crying.
Mm.
And so he stopped practice and he said, "Look, everybody, when I stop yelling at you, that's when you know you're in trouble because that means that I've given up on you."
Yeah, that is true. That is very true.
And so that kid figured it out and became one of the better players because he recognized that the guy wasn't yelling at him for spite or to
Right.
demean. He was trying to get his point across.
Well, and I mean, that's a great coaching moment right there to clearly understand, like, oops, I stepped over a line. I need to set the context here. And, others would be, start yelling at the kid for crying. But he did the exact right thing and stopped the practice and said, "Hey, this is why I'm doing this."
Yeah, there's that other favorite movie of mine. It's There's No Crying in Baseball. And but that's it. What does it take? And you've been a coach for a long time. What does it take to be an exceptional coach?
Um, I think you you really have to. There's a couple things. I think one, and we just kind of touched on it. You really do have to care about the other person's success. Um, And you have to show that. I mean, it is when I'm sit down with a prospective client. I mean, one of the things I tell them is like, number one, this is an interview of me as much as it is an interview of you. You have to feel like you can work with me because there's going to be a lot of trust we're going to need to build up. There's going to be things I'm going to need to talk to you about that you're going to need to share with me that you might not share with your spouse or you might not share with your best friend. And if you don't trust me or don't feel like I have your best interest at heart, the relationship's not going to work. So I think trust is number one. Um, I don't expect people to give it to me right away, but I'm going to do my damnedest to prove that I'm worthy of their trust. Um, I think you have to be a really good listener and ask a lot of really good questions. Um, Even though we've got software and now AI is starting to come into play with coaching, um, I have to really look beyond the numbers because it only tells me part of it. I really need to lean in and ask them questions about, how are you feeling? I'm picking up a tone in your comments on your workouts that um, maybe you're a little fatigued. No, I've had a bad day. Oh, okay, cool. Well, we can keep moving. So I think being a good listener and asking the right questions is probably the other big aspect. Um, I went back and forth on how important is expertise. And while I think there, especially with things like cycling and running, there's mechanics and physiology and all that's super helpful. But I think you can still be a coach if you've got number one and number two. If you can build trust and you can listen and ask the right questions, you can still be a very successful coach.
Personally, I think that is absolutely key. I had a coach, he was a wrestling coach in ninth grade. He had a book out um, that of wrestling moves because he didn't know any because he never wrestled in his life, but he was supportive of all of us in the team
Hmm.
and wanted us to get to be the best that we could be. And so he led us that way. And isn't a coach a really good leader?
Absolutely. In a number of ways. I mean, I think um, more if I flip over to the corporate side. I mean, even though in my corporate life, I was a director and a leader, but really what I did at the end of the day was help coach my teams, coach my people, help get, I knew the key to being successful was find smart, motivated people, point them in the right direction, provide them support, and then get out of their way. And that's really what I was doing was being a coach, but that's leading because I'm helping develop my folks, developing my team, making them more successful. Our performance would increase. But that's the key to leadership right there.
It's a wonderful. I love the concept of great leadership because great leaders do great things and
Hmm.
they can get teams to do things that they didn't even think they could do.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's where we see a lot of the overlap between athletics and um, the corporate world. And in fact, I work, probably half the folks I work with um, are, employed, and some of them have very high power jobs. And it's funny how when we're talking, work will come to the picture, and I will say, well, you've been traveling a lot. Have you taken time, some downtime to recover from the travel? Oh, you're right. Just like my training, I need to do. So it allows us to use athletics um, as a context to explain, hey, these principles are the same. You can't keep burning the candle at both ends and expect to keep at a high performing rate. So that overlap has been really interesting to see that the principles are the same. You need to put a little stress on the folks so that they learn and grow, give them a little break so that they can adapt and learn from that, and then you give them the next big challenge and the next big challenge. Unfortunately, the current corporate world doesn't really do that. It's do this thing, move on to the next thing.
And is it I feel like in many instances, they're not looking at the employee or the employee is somebody that they are in charge of as a real person with real needs and real wants, and that they're not going to be on top of their game every day, but you need to develop a relationship with them so that you can walk up to somebody and say, I'm sensing you're not feeling it today. Are you okay? And after they're done crying on your shoulder because their wife left them, or they've got there's some their kid came home with a policeman in tow, and a very which happened to my dad, by the way. But and different things like that. By the way, we are talking with Michael Seiler, something like that. Seiler,
You
and
got it.
go to his website, which is metaperformance.com. Still haven't talked about Roger Bannister. Do you remember that story?
I do. I actually just read, it's been long, not just, it's probably been about 6 or 8 months. I read the book on him breaking the mile. But tell the story because I love it.
We're going to return in just a second, and we're going to tie. And this has everything to do with mindset and has nothing to do with anything else. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and Michael. And go to his website, please, which is metaperformance.com. He's got a whole team of people. He's got peoples that are there to help him. And one of them happens to be his very own daughter, which I think is really pretty. He must be very proud of her, by the way.
I am very proud of her. She actually just graduated from college about 10 days ago. So it's a big milestone, and she's now over in Belgium racing bikes for a Belgian team for the summer.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
In a whole different country she is.
Yes.
So I wanted to mention, because mindset is such a big deal. There was a time in this country. Now we do like the 100 meters and stuff like that. But it used to be like the 100-yard dash and things like that, and the mile, which now they do that in kilometers, but at that time it was the mile. And there was something called the 4-minute mile. And doctors would come out and say, "Oh no, the human body is not able to go that fast. It just isn't. It's physiologically impossible." And a guy tried to break in track and field, tried to break the 4-minute mile, and they did that for a very long time, and nobody could do it. Nobody could do it. Everybody, they got a little closer and they inched closer to it, but nobody could do it until this one time. This guy by the name of Roger Bannister, I believe he's from England, and he did the 4-minute mile. He did a sub 4-minute mile, which means he did it in like 3 minutes and 50 some odd seconds. And it was news worldwide, because this was a really big, a thing of like, it's like Babe Ruth and the 60 home runs when people would get close, it was one of those milestones that oh no, that's never going to be broken, and stuff like that, and he did it. Well, interestingly enough, within, I believe it, and you read the book, so maybe you can correct me, but I believe within the next 3 or 4 months or less, several more guys
Yep,
broke the 4-minute mile.
that's correct.
And that just tells us that it wasn't the body, it was the mind, because now they believed that they could do it because somebody else had. And so they did it. And that's how we roll both in business. If you
Hmm.
don't believe, let me give you an example. If you have a business, like I was a general manager of a restaurant. When I got to that restaurant, turnover was 300% a year. And I said, "How do you run a business at 300% turnover?" And he said, "Well, these are just kids and da 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 da," because they had waitresses and busboys and all that kind of stuff. And I said, "How do you treat them?" And he said, "They're just kids. I don't treat them. I'm the manager, and they do what I tell them. That's basically what it is." So he left, and I took over. And the next year, turnover dropped below 100% because I talked to them as people, not
Hmm.
as an employee, not as a bus person. Matter of fact, the first meeting that I had with them, I said, "Who's the most important person in the room right now?" I had cooks and dishwashers and wait staff and hostesses and busboys and bartenders and stuff. And a lot of them looked at me and said, "Well, certainly, sir, you are." And I said, "No, you guys don't need me. If you guys are the most important people in the world, and my job is to make you the most money I can."
Yeah.
Nobody's ever said that to them before.
Wow.
And I said, so consequently, and the reason how you make money is to have us fill the seats, turn the seats quickly, get the food in
Hmm.
and out, and get the service up and do it all with a smile. You're going to make more in tips. You're going to be able to tip the busboys more. The cooks are going to make more because the restaurant's doing better. Everybody wins. And from that point on, they kind of got where I was going with that, and it
Nice.
worked.
Yeah.
And but why is it that so many people go into management and they can't get, because that is a simple philosophy. That doesn't take rocket science.
No, I think a lot of it, honestly, what I've seen is driven by fear.
Oh,
Uh, you get to a certain position and um, you start to fear um, failure, and especially then if your failure is um, if you're not hiring well or you have a staff that's not doing well. Well, fear takes over. How do I control this? Well, I start becoming more of this micromanaging lead. I won't even use the word leader, micromanaging manager. It's this person that starts to tell people how to do their job versus just letting them do their job. But I think it comes a lot from fear, a fear of failure, a fear of making a mistake, a fear of looking bad in front of their staff, where I would argue that being more transparent, being more vulnerable to your staff is going to, win them over. Realize you are a human. It's going to, endear them to you to see like, oh, makes a mistake and he dusts himself off and goes and tries again. But yeah, I think it's definitely fear.
Michael, why is it that some, not all, but some employers play the fear card, because they think they'll get better results from their management team? As an example, my father worked for a company. I don't want to name them, but they used his bonus as a carrot and a stick, and his
Hmm.
budget as a carrot and a stick. The budget was high. It was virtually unachievable, but they gave him that budget to stretch him. But people got fired because they couldn't meet the budget that they had set for them. So he was in a constant state of fear that I'm going to lose my job because the numbers aren't good enough and stuff like that. And they promoted that. Why do businesses do that?
That's a good question. Uh, thankfully, I've been the last company I was at for 25 years. That was not the way they did things, but I have been at other companies that's definitely the way they did things. And I think it's a cultural thing that this company was often it starts it's a small company, starts to grow. It's easy to manage now. As it grows a little bit more, people again get afraid of failure, and so their natural inclination is, I'm just going to try to control everything. I'm going to create systems that probably your dad's company, they said, oh, we did that to help motivate them. But then if you're firing people, I mean, that's not really motivational.
No.
If you give them a number that everybody knows you can't achieve, um, there was a time at the company I recently retired from where we had made a projection of sales we were going to come in at, and we started realizing that that wasn't attainable. And I had to go back to some upper management folks, and I had to show them the data and do all that, and said, we're not going to make it. We're looking at other ways to try to make up, but at this point I don't. And thankfully they said, okay, well, let's try to figure out how we can mitigate the miss and so forth. Are there ways we can save money that will help kind of cover that gap? But a lot of companies, I won't say a lot, but there's still companies out there that use fear as a motivator. And you know, fear can be motivating. You see a bear running through the woods, it's going to motivate you to get the hell out of there. But
You just
it's a
don't
pretty
want to be
short.
you
It's a
just don't
pretty
want to be the
short.
slowest one.
Right. You just try to run with somebody slower. That's true. Uh, but fear, using fear as a motivator it's a short, not very long lasting, and you can only use it a few times.
Because eventually people are, well, because a guy gets fired and a new manager comes in and says, that's not going to happen to me. And so the he looks at his budget and he looks at where he's at and he says, I got to work more. So he works 80, 90 hours a week
Hmm.
to try and make it work. That is not sustainable.
No.
And so he does that, and then he still doesn't make his budget and he gets fired anyway.
Right. Right.
And in the meantime, his home life is wrecked. He doesn't know who his children are and all of that stuff. And every time he is home, he's medicating himself one way or the other because he's got a couple of beers after work because I'm so
Wouldn't hurt.
stressed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if somebody wants to come to you and talk to you about being a better boss, being a better employee, being a better runner and stuff, how do they do that?
Easiest way, I mean, they can go to my website, metaperformance.com. We're also active. We're most active on Instagram at metta dot performance. That's where we spend most of our energy posting and stuff. But if you go to our website, you can learn all about our coaches, because we do feel that finding the right coach, you need to be able to work with them long term. It is a relationship. And so one of our coaches may resonate you more than the other. And we have a way to contact us on the website.
And it's really cool when you have got a great relationship with a great coach and they're vested in your success and you beat your personal best, or you hit that home run when the team needs you to, or whatever it is, and they're smiling bigger than you are. Well, that's when you know you've got a good coach who's vested in your success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had mentioned earlier in our conversation about my client who broke her PR by 7 minutes on her second half marathon. And I swear, I think I was more emotional than she was as we were approaching the finish line. I was like, I'm, I'm, I'm running and enjoying this run, but like this, I've had more fun being here, seeing you do this. So it's true. it's a great feeling when you help someone overcome a challenge, and to see how they did it, how they fought through it, and just to be there for me was just a real emotional moment.
And by the way, we're talking with Michael. Your last name, please.
Tyler.
Tyler. Michael. Michael Tyler or Seiler. Jiminy Christmas. Michael Seiler. And if you go to his website, which is metaperformance.com, you can find out all about him, his team. He's got a wonderful fellow leader named Holly. And I'm not sure if I met her, but I know a lot of really cool Hollies. So-
May not have met her. Holly's a former. She's got an amazing background. She's been performing at the elite level for years, but she was for quite a while was a professional triathlete, and just all around good human.
And that's it. Speaking of good humans, I want to when we come back from this break, I want to talk about the principles of Buddhism that you find particularly endearing. I know kindness and being loving and stuff, but what other aspects of that do you include in your work? Because there has to be, not only is there a physical component and a mindset component, but there has to be a spiritual component too. I
Hmm.
think. So we will be right back. It's just 30 seconds. Everybody calm down. We'll be right back.
When the game is on the line, championship teams know the game plan. They communicate and work together to win. We all need a game plan to protect ourselves online. Talk to family and friends so they know how to stay safe too. Create strong passwords, turn on multi-factor authentication, update software, and recognize and report phishing, because online safety is not something you want to fumble. Get more game-winning tips at cisa.gov/secure our world. Then share them with family and friends.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. I had to play that commercial, Michael, because it had football players on it and stuff.
I saw that.
But I wanted to ask you, because there has to be a spiritual component, because it all revolves around each other. Talk a little bit about some Buddhist principles that you incorporate in the work that you do.
Yeah, that's a great. I'm glad we're hitting this, because I really do believe, and it's not just for athletics or um, being good in your corporate life, but I think to lead a fulfilling life, there is a spiritual aspect. Um, and although I was raised Episcopalian, went to church on Sunday, was in the choir, altar boy, all that stuff, youth group. Um, my parents were very open to, like, exposing me to different things, and whether it was Eastern religion, whatever, turned me on to a lot of things. And Buddhism just resonated with me for a number of reasons. I think um, the concept of loving kindness, treating yourself, uh, with loving kindness, being kind to yourself. We are our own worst enemies at times. We say the worst things about ourselves. We say things about ourselves that we would never say about any other human. Um, it's funny that one of the ads you ran earlier, the guy talked about the white wolf, and there's this story of the two wolves, the good wolf and the bad wolf, and the father's telling the story, and the son goes, "Well, which one wins?" And the father says, "The one you feed." And if you consistently feed your bad wolf those negative thoughts, those impulsive thoughts, that's the one that's going to win. If you give them, and so what Buddhism has helped me do is, mindfulness gets thrown around a lot, but I think it really helps, because I meditate every day, um, and it helps me just quiet my mind so that I can be present and get all of those discursive thoughts out of my brain and just really be in the moment. And there's a ton of science that shows just the act of meditating starts to rewire your brain so that when I'm in a conversation with you, I'm fully present. I'm listening to everything you're saying. I'm not worrying about what's going to happen at the end of this thing, and I'm not worried about what we said 10 minutes ago. It's really what's going on right now because this is the only moment that exists. And that's so powerful when you're in a running race or you're in doing an Ironman where you've got 3 long events. You When you're swimming, you can't be thinking about the bike. And when you're biking, the swim's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. It's over. And so having that mindfulness to be able to stay in the present, and really that's the key, I think, to building that sustainable high performance. Whether you're at work, how can you find those moments so that you can really focus, take a break, kind of recharge, reset, get a break? So meditation has been super helpful for me. Just the practicing loving kindness, taking care of myself so I can take care of others. And there is, I mean, even within Buddhism, there is this concept of being in service to others. And I really think as a coach, that's really what I am. I'm in service of others, helping them be the best person they can be, and helping them realize there's a great saying that um, in Buddhism where, if you fall down or you forget to meditate one day, begin again, begin again. Oh, you had a tough day at work, couldn't get your run in. Great. Begin again. And that constant just begin again. Forget about that. It's gone. Nothing you can change about that. But you can change today. You can change this moment right now. And so some of those concepts have really helped me personally, but also infusing those in folks' training. Because you're going to have bad days. And so, if you don't have the resilience, don't have the mindset to be able to get through that, you're just going to wallow in your own self-pity and negative thoughts. You're going to feed that bad wolf. Where I want to help people learn how to feed the good wolf.
Which is really important, but a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand the concept, nor do they get it that's they still are embroiled in what happened in the past
Yep.
that is now affecting them in the present and is going to affect them in the future because it is ever present in their lives. And that's why you need a quality coach who can help you get past that. You can't do any. I can't do anything about the past. The
Nope.
past is there, and it just is. And you know what I'm learning? And tell me if you agree with this, Michael, that in a lot of cases, the past that we think happened is a story that we're making up about it that didn't necessarily even happen the way we said it did, but we want to make ourselves feel better, so we blame other people, and that's what. And so it becomes a real convoluted deal of the past and feeling, like
Hmm.
and blaming other people and all this kind of stuff, which it just. I have a good friend who I do tell her all the time because she is a little um sensitive about stuff and stuff, and she's always saying, well, yeah, but what about in this and that, and okay, what about okay? And I said, let it be, just
Hmm.
let it be. That's the gospel according to Paul McCartney, if anybody's curious.
It's good stuff.
It really is. And what she is learning is that if she just lets it be, a lot of that crap goes away.
Yeah. You want to know a great tool I've used when I talk with folks like that and they're worrying about all these things is I draw basically a target, and in the center are the things that they can control. The next layer is things they can influence, and then everything outside of that is things that are outside their control. And so when I get someone coming, well, what do we do about this? But this is could happen, and I say, great, put that first thing, put that in here in one of those rings. Oh, that's something I can't control. Okay, let it go. What about this thing? Oh, that's something I could influence. Okay, well, how are you going to attack that? Oh, I could call Bill and ask Bill to pull me into his meeting, and I can explain to him how that impacts me. Great, do that. What about this thing? Oh, that thing I can control. Okay, do that. Control it. And it just like you see people's eyes like, oh, okay, I can let that go. I can do something here and I can build an action plan, and the things I can control, I can immediately take care of.
Doesn't that create a lot of empowerment for
Oh,
them?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because now they have a plan and they recognize what they can't control, let it go. What you
Hmm.
can control, do something about it, and create a plan. And
Exactly.
that's a beautiful philosophy to have. Um, I just wish more people had it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what keeps coaches in business.
That is so true, and people like me that I get to talk about that with people like you because it is vital. I have a coach. Everybody, I believe, needs a coach because there are blind spots. We all have blind spots, and she always gets me when she says when I'll say something. She said, "What do you mean by that?" And then it makes me think about what I meant by that and stuff, and then that goes into a whole different rabbit hole. So in
Oh,
any
absolutely.
event, Michael, it is great fun talking to you.
Yeah, this was
Um,
fun.
I really have enjoyed the time, and especially the concept of mindfulness and taking care of each other and being kind to one another. And we need we need as a society to make the decision that that's how we're going to roll, because that is how you respond to somebody else is well within your ability to control. And if
Yep.
might be, I drove a bus for 12 years. There are lots of people that were mean to me. Um, but I could control the energy of the entire bus by how I behaved. Nobody
Absolutely.
else, but just me.
That's
And
right.
so the next time if you're listening to this and you're going to go to the grocery store afterwards, I want you to think about how you're presenting yourself to the checker. Are you doing it from a place of kindness and appreciation and love, or are you doing it? You're not fast enough, and da 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 da. I would suggest that you be kind.
Amen.
And Michael, isn't there positive karma that goes along with that?
I'm a huge believer in positive karma. Um, but I think now more than ever, the world could use more kindness, not less. And it's amazing. Uh, Another challenge I'll put to your listeners is um, I do this periodically, but like I was recently traveling, and so I spent a fair amount of time in airports. And as I was walking through the airport, I said, I'm going to smile at everybody I make eye contact with. And it was amazing to see the people who returned it. And there was no word spoken. It was just a smile. And it didn't matter who they were, but smile. And I could see people who looked stressed before I smiled to them. It looked kind of their face lit up a little bit. But it's just like that one little thing. It cost me nothing. Um, some may have walked by and said, "What a weirdo," but um,
No.
I think these little things that we can do just to be kind to others, because we don't know what everybody's going through, and chances are that you're going to run into somebody who's going through some real stuff, and that little bit of kindness may make the difference for them that day.
I learned this when I was driving a bus, is that there were people that I said, "Hey, how you doing?" who nobody had talked to them all day.
Wow.
Nobody. Nobody had smiled at them. Nobody had said, "How are you?" And I genuinely meant it when I said it. And that can change somebody's whole day, their whole
Hmm.
outlook.
Yeah.
And that's important for us to do.
Yeah. I agree.
So go to metaperformance.com, get all the information, and they're a group of great coaches. And Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kevin. This was a good conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. And you're going to have to come back because we've got more. And in the event, thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. And and I say it in the ending, but I'll say it now again. Be kind to each other, would you please? It doesn't take much. Michael's right. Doesn't cost you anything. But you can do it. And you'd be amazed at the reaction that you'll get. We'll see you next time on Positive Talk. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at